All right, well, let's dive into a new one from a prominent artist within the prog adjacent scene. You know, he's kind of always on the wisps of the progressive rock, more in terms of like who he knows and the individuals that he's dealt with and the history of the musician rather than the actual music that's brought forth. But that doesn't compromise the listen, so let's dive in. Butterfly Mind by Tim Bowness. So Tim Bowness is a UK artist, and as I mentioned at the very beginning, I hesitate to use the word like progressive rock artist. Like, I mainly cover prog and progressive rock on this channel, and Tim is always kind of like on the outskirts, mainly with his relationship with Steven Wilson, being a collaborator with No Man, and they put out a brilliant album a handful of years ago with Love You to Bits, which was almost like this electrical dance kind of disco odyssey. And of course, he also does a lot of solo work under his own name, and I got into his work really late. I mean, this one is his 12th studio album after his first one with Richard Barberi, Flame. So even from the very beginning, he was working with individuals from Porcupine Tree back in 1994, and has done a lot with Samuel Smiles and Peter Chives. In 2004, found his first solo work without kind of an external individual with My Hotel Year. And then he took like a 10-year hiatus where he came in with Abandoned Dance Hall Dreams, which I actually have in my collection. It's a very nice, very pleasant, very dreamscape, very dream-like approach to like adult contemporary. As I mentioned, I got into him a little bit later on. My first album with him was actually Lost in the Ghost Light in 2017. It was a very interesting approach to this more singer-songwriter, adult contemporary pop type of music, like very accessible, but also pushing the boundaries in terms of play styles, in terms of production work. And in 2020, he put out Late Night Laments, which was fine. You know, I was a little bit more lukewarm to that one. I felt like it was almost a direct response to Love You to Bits, the No Man album that he did with Steven Wilson. And I actually ended up loving Love You to Bits a lot more. I really liked the experimentation of that particular album. So we come into Butterfly Mind, which I also feel is a response to Late Night Laments and a lot of what Tim was doing kind of within his own work, where Late Night Laments was very focused. It was very precise. Like, it had a very crystal clear idea for each song, and each song never really strayed from the mean. I feel Butterfly Mind definitely is a lot more whimsical in its variety of music. There's a lot more expressions to be found on this one. You know, Tim is definitely taking a lot more of a creative endeavor on this one, not limiting himself to any one expression. In some ways, this really works because it provides a varied and wide variety of different takes on his music. But at the other hand, not all the expressions work. There are a few tracks on here that I feel are less than stellar, and I end up actually skipping them more often than not. But I really want to talk about those aspects that I really do like about this album. I really like how intimate all of these tracks feel. Like, Tim is a master of songwriting-ship, of knowing how to really pinpoint a expression of music. The album opens up and closes with the bookmarks Say Your Goodbyes, a very short, very punchy, very sweet track, but there's always this glistening of darkness just kind of waiting in the wings. And I like how this goes into Always the Stranger, which is very interesting because the mid-track, the seventh track, is after The Stranger. And so I like how much thought has been put into this album in terms of creating a very solid sit-down listen, like from start to finish in that sense. Always the Stranger does the 180, and it does really showcase how this album is being approached. Say Your Goodbyes Part 1, as I mentioned, is very somber. Always the Stranger is a lot more abrasive. It's a lot more bombastic. It starts off with a very prominent drum rhythm, drum lick that is answered by a very smooth, very punchy guitar, and it's a lot more aggressive something that Tim doesn't really experiment with all too much within the works that I've been experienced to. And After the Stranger is almost the 180 of Always the Stranger. You know, it's menacing. It's got a lot more of the synth overlays, both within the rhythm and within the textures and the flavors. Again, it contrasts and mirrors the Always the Stranger, which had a lot more of the traditional musical outlets. We have very traditional drums and guitars and, you know, piano and synths in that sense, where After the Stranger is a lot more synthesized. There's a lot more production on that one. So I like how this entire album has this butterfly mind where it's always kind of moving and drifting and never really settling on any one expression. And talking about a little bit more of the aggressive side, we have We Feel, the 4th track, and Only a Fool, the 6th track. Both of these are very punchy, very poignant tracks. We Feel is, you know, a lot more driven in terms of drum work, in terms of being traditional, in terms of its rocking roots, where Only a Fool is a lot more driven in terms of like the EDM dance style, a little bit more on the disco side of things, but both having that driven essence, that driven style behind it. And one thing that Tim is very good at doing is capturing a crystal clear emotion and this melancholical dourness about the music, and this is found within Lost Prayer and Glitter Fades, and especially on the big track, probably my favorite track, The Dark Nevada Dream. It almost has this like Americana distortion towards it, like the kind of somber approach to an Americana song, but all this overlay of synths and mood, and almost like, you know, the English rain came over and just poured down on the Nevada landscape. Really, really fun in terms of creating atmosphere, in terms of creating mood. It's very moody and very melancholical without ever getting melodramatic in that sense. It feels like a dour English afternoon, but set to the landscape of this rolling dunes of Nevada. But as I mentioned at the beginning, this album, you know, isn't perfect. There's a few tracks on here that I feel are less than great. Easier to Love, the 3rd track, is not a great track in my mind. It doesn't really connect all that well. It feels very much like a singer-songwriter lament or ballad that doesn't quite work. And the same goes for About the Light That Hits the Forest Floor. I feel like Tim is trying to capture this melancholical singer-songwriter approach, and for me, it doesn't quite work all that well. And it's this style of music is like trying to thread a needle, you know, with about a yard's worth of yarn, and it's really difficult to pull off. And I just feel like it wavers a little too much without really sticking the landing in that case. So in the end, Butterfly Mind is a little bit of a mixed grab bag, but in a better sense than a lot of albums that I would say are mixed grab bag. It's a mixed grab bag in terms of expression and variety rather than quality. Even though, you know, there are the 2 tracks on here that I think do drag the album down just a hair, I still feel as though this is Tim's strongest work to date. I feel like there's very few duds on this album, and I like the variety on this. Like, I really do dig just how this album floats along. And in the end, I will say that Butterfly Mind by Tim Bowness is one that I would still download. You know, there's enough on this album to really sink your teeth into and really dive into. The production work on this is stellar. Like, it is an A+ in terms of production. If you want just that crystal clear, very beautifully laid out, the sounds and the soundscapes on this, next to none. So yeah, that's what I've got for Butterfly Mind from Tim Bowness. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And that's all I've got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.